Yo, what's up, everybody? My name is Boogie Bills. This is my homie Melgar from Melgar Media. We're going to be breaking down this amazing Kenobi two-part drop that dropped early. Thank you. You guys rock. What's up, Melgar? What'd you think about it, the open? It's fucking amazing, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I'm excited. They so far so good. They've dropped a lot of really fun Easter eggs. They pulled you with the recap. They pulled you fully back into the immersive world of the prequels and leading into what's next.
Yeah, man, I like especially love that open of we're going to roll in and crush out fucking on Coruscant and just go straight into Order 66, just filling in lore and like just a nice little tidbit of hey, here's Order 66 being executed.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Coruscant, and we didn't know when we were going to see it next. We didn't know if the Andor series was going to be the next viewing of it, but I liked how they jumped right back into it, and the way that it was filmed just really made you feel like you're coming right out of episode 1, 2, and 3. And I've always wanted to kind of see further what Coruscant has to offer, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, in the slaying of Jedi Master Minas Velti, like going in, I think we're gonna possibly find out that that was Vera too. Like, I love that aspect of it. Just like watching them go from training to that highly intense scene. Like, I don't know, man. It was just it was really well done. And I loved it. I just love that they open up with that. Totally unexpected to start off on Coruscant, you know?
Yeah, and I think seeing the younglings again, and like I said, they just did a really seamless and flawless continuation of what we saw in Revenge of the Sith, and I feel like that there was a little bit of similarities to what we saw with Rogu when he had his mini flashback, and he's in that hallway, and Order 66 is being carried out, and I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of linkage there. Who knows? Keep your eyes open for that.
Well, I like as we go along, it's like the entirety of the order is filled in more and more. You know what I mean? It's like, we start off in, episode 3 and we get all that. We're like, oh, wow, that's brutal, And now we're seeing more and more just like how deep of a toll that affected. We saw that in Rebels with like Kanan and everything. We saw that in Bad Batch too, I think, like because they showed how he left even more, which was so it's just cool that they're kind of looping that all these eras in with how they tied in to that specific event in the galaxy, that galactic event, so to speak.
Yeah, because it's the blanket of the Empire's chest now being thrust upon more and more planets reaching out. Like we haven't reached. I know that Star Wars Theory even mentioned. I watched his feed earlier. They haven't reached the point of where Tarkin can just blow up planets on the ready.
Yeah.
Without repercussions. They're kind of leading into that. So
they're in a precarious position, so to speak. Too,
yeah. We get to really see that grasp getting tighter. And then becoming this. The entity that we saw in A New Hope.
Definitely. I mean, right now it's just in the universe. Technically, we're gonna have, Tarkin and Krennic fighting over Stardust, Project Stardust. At the same time, Thrawn's got his TIE Defender project running on Lothal, which is covered in the Rebels series. And I'm sure that's at least started up at this point. Because so there's resources that are going all over the place, but they really want to finish Project Stardust, the Death Star and stuff. So just to get into that, like and start on like Galactic Center or Coruscant, like at that pivotal moment, and like roll forward, and then we just go to like desert. It's a great cut.
Tatooine, the staple.
Yeah, the twin sun staple.
Yeah. But I just really like that their approach and how Dave and John are really expanding on something that so many people are like, stop beating the dead horse. But there was so much that went on, but in these periods between the major events that you kind of want that to be going on simultaneously as creating new stories, because it really was this Skywalker saga that had most Star Wars fans fall in love with Star Wars. So to completely abandon it, even side story esque, I think it'd be rough, because then you're always going to be searching for that magic again.
Yeah.
And you can't really, lightning can't really strike twice on something created like this.
Yeah.
So for me, it's okay if the stories don't hold up amazingly, but you still kind of want it in the background, so then you always have a foundation to go back to after watching newer shows that don't have anything to do with the Skywalker series.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that tie-in is great, like you have the tie-in, but then at the same time, the distance as well, And I think they're really hitting it well with how they threw like a bunch of curveballs throughout both of these episodes, It's like just even things that, as someone that loves Star Wars and is really deep into it, I wasn't expecting them to, start on Coruscant, start off with that.
100%.
Some of the other things too that we'll get into later are just kind of like, whoa, that's awesome.
And a lot of the returning cast members, like that have been in previous episodes or movies, that they're hiring the same exact actors. It's huge because it just really has that continuity to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what they're going for too. And I think that's when you're pulling in that Coruscant and that Clone Order 66 and starting it off with it, you're really setting the pace, right? Because like just coming in on Kenobi in order to fill in that lore, it's a really tenuous tightrope that you're walking, I mean, because like, you can either stay on the planet, like that's what we thought was going to be going down with Obi-Wan, but just seemed really weird, like what, he's just going to stay there the whole time and hang out and just check on Luke, just flying on top of the hut. Like that sounds terrible, bro.
Exactly.
And I think he's ready to do that, and we see Obi-Wan at that point, and he's like not able to help out any of the other people that are struggling around him, and just keeping his head down when we go into Mos Eisley and and see what's going on, And as that story develops along too, like by seeing the other Jedi and stuff, and like what happens there, it's intense, man.
Yeah, it had to be created somewhat that way for the dramatic part of it, and to extend kind of what Obi-Wan does during that period. I know a lot of people are okay with not knowing because of they don't want the New Hope stuff to be tarnished in any way, but at the same time, to create this series and to give fans more to watch and enjoy, they had to create a scenario where he leaves Tatooine, which is very reminiscent of the hastiness of when Luke left Dagobah to go on, his friends. But he even declines in the episode when he's asked. He's like, "No, I'm not going. I'm not that person."
Find somebody else. Find somebody else.
Luke, obviously Luke is just like, "I'm on my way. Let's go."
I am that guy.
Yeah.
He goes straight off. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's like that's a very humanizing aspect of Obi-Wan. I think that's something we're gonna end up covering a lot in this. It's like Obi-Wan is broken, right? He's watched his best friend, go down in flames. He's watched everything he lived for go down in flames. We see him on Tatooine. He's just broken. He can't even help people. What he did.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what that first episode is to really portray how, broken he is, but he's still trying to continue in this, in the realm that he has to be in, which is done correctly. And it just draws me to think, like, why in the sequel trilogy do we have to continue to repeat the broken Jedi scenario to the extent of it's like, we really need you to feel like this person is downtrodden at his worst moment. It's like, they can still be Jedi and you can still portray them as these heroes of the universe without making them go the Hobbit route, or just like go away from everyone else and seclude yourself in a little hole in the ground. It's like they can. I really like how they're portraying Obi-Wan as he's got a day-to-day job and
he's got his things going on.
He's still around
safe.
People. Yeah, he's still around people. So I definitely like that aspect. And I think that him going on some adventures just adds to the lore of the character.
Yeah.
And this is going to be new canon. So moving forward, the OT trilogy is not just going to be, this mystic character that we see for 20 minutes out of a whole film. You know?
Who just mystically uses the powers of the Force to disappear too, And I think this aspect of it too that we're exploring, like that humanizing effect, right? Like we see it more too because he's not very force powered up. You know what I mean? At this point, they get into it a lot more in that second episode, and I think that is going to come into play later. But we see it in this first episode too, because he's reaching out to Qui-Gon, right? Like in his base of operations, you know, his little like cave in the middle of a desert, and he can't do it, right? So he doesn't have that power yet. And I'm sure, as you said, like right off the bat, like when are we going to get a Force Ghost? It's going to be right away, you know? And like we were talking about it, and like we know it's coming, but it's like at what point? And I think it'll be once he reaches a different pinnacle, right? Like he's going to be transforming into an entirely new Jedi Master, I think, from this Clone Wars Commander Cody, you know, kind of badass, you know, into a new kind of sage-like guy that we saw in the original trilogy, right? You know, like,
I mean, that's when he makes that famous quote. He's like, "You strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you've ever imagined."
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And he's also trying to communicate with Qui-Gon without pushing out too much force, because that gives him away to the Inquisitors, right? So he's actually trying to
definitely. He's got to figure that out, right?
Yeah, trying to find that balance has got to be a whole new, you know, just being sought out.
He's got to pull a Papa Palpatine.
Being a Jedi,
He's got to know how to use his Force powers and be fully cloaked too, right? Like, because there were times when we would see, especially in like the Clone Wars and Rebels, like a great example would be actually right around the demise of the brother that we see in this one, the fifth brother. The Emperor reaches out with a Force because he knows that Maul and Savage Opress are getting too powerful again and are just like messing up his plans, right? And he's like right in the Senate, right? like he's just right there. So you're like, man, he's using the Force that hard that he can see like a galaxy away, but he figured it out, right? So like I think that's very interesting that Obi-Wan now is like, I got to figure out how to be Palpatine in this. I got to use my Force powers to, you know, talk with my former master, but at the same time not give away too much of the juice so that they're going to come and find me, you know? And they get in that, you know?
The Emperor called it the veil, right? Like he had like a veil over
veil
his
of shadows, I think, almost, or something like that.
Sith, like, you know, the what he was putting out there. And I'm sure he had to train, you know, to be that deceptive and to be under the radar that whole time. And that a lot of people thought it was a plot hole when it was actually just the power of the Sith at that point, like the Emperor. Like it was like, that's what should, when you're watching him go down that tube in Return of the Jedi, you should understand, like, that is the pinnacle though of one of the most powerful entities that we only saw in the extended now, you know, universe, and talked about with all of the Sith Lords before him and the unfortunate... How many it
took to get there, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Which actually that has been canonized, because in, I believe, the Clone Wars, I think one of the holocrons that Yoda talks to is Darth Bane, who started the Rule of Two. Yeah. Which if they follow, it's not canonized how far back it was, but we know from legends that that was at least thousands of years, you know, previously. Yeah. So it's like, there's so many Jedi that come in, Sith that come in between that time to fill that, and he hits that pinnacle, right, and then gets tossed down a fucking hole.
I mean, have you heard of the tragic story of
Darth Plagueis the Wise? No, tell me about it, please. You know?
Yeah.
Even Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga was like, hey, have you heard the tale? It was a beautiful cut of it too, because they really made fun of that. It was great,
and with these shows, you know, all of that starts to come to light, because they are just testing the waters and the temperature to see how fans react to live action versions of, let's say, the Master Inquisitor. You know, it's just kind of like, it's the Grand Inquisitor, excuse me. But they're kind of like testing that to be like, how does this touch with the audience? Like, if we brought back, you know, Darth Plagueis in future shows, how is it going to resonate? Like, are they going to be like, okay, this is too much? Like,
well, and they brought him in well too, you know, like, because they show them using their powers to find that new Jedi. And I mean, they found that dude right away. You know, they touched down, and within a little, they're like, oh, the guy's right here. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's crazy that, like, that's their inclusion is going really hard on it, right? Like, in my opinion, they're like, look at how badass these guys are. They're the pinnacle of inquisitorial skills, you know?
Yeah,
But then when,
and the ship they land in is definitely reminiscent of Kylo Ren's ship, further down the road. But
oh
early
yeah, it
versions,
looks just like right, like a smaller version. It's so cool.
yeah, and I looked into it, and it was
Hmm.
just like the ship is not named; it's just the Inquisitor transport.
Yeah,
And
that's
but it
wild.
is, I mean, it's super cool to see how this lore is just continuing, and just the overall cinematography and the look and the rustiness and everything that they bring back the
Yeah.
original feel is, and mix it in with the
Hmm.
Filoni verse of it is really, really fun to see come to life.
Yeah, I'm really digging that. Like the portrayal of Tatooine, we get both Anchorhead and Mos Eisley. It's just awesome, man. You know, it's like it's really a cool thing that we've been able to see. You know, and then going from there and just having like the Grand Inquisitor, we have the fifth brother come down and the third sister. You know, it was nice, to see them come down. It's such a stark contrast. You know, we're in all browns. It's the worn down Tatooine, and they just fly right down in the middle and walk right in and just start murking people. You know, so it was a nice juxtaposition of Imperial world. You know, we start there, then we go back to Tatooine, and then we watch the Imperial centers. You know, kind of intrusion into this backwoods world. It was really excellently done, like the slow
Yeah,
parts
and
into the fast
you
parts.
just read people's body language and
Yeah,
in the cantina, and
yeah,
you just see how just the presence of uh, you know inquisitors or imperial troopers, it's just like it's
yeah.
you
I
can
think they're
see
hammering
how
that
it's
home great.
changed. Yeah, and how it's changing. And if it's already hitting spots in the outer rim at that point,
Yeah,
like we're coming to the climax of when we start the original trilogy. But
Hmm. Hmm.
watching like people cower in the presence of the inquisitors, just kinds of, like I'm sure there are a bunch of smugglers and day traders and thieves, and they're cowering down. So it goes to show you kind of where we're at in
Yeah,
the spectrum of things.
yeah. It's pretty wild, like how because even the basic stormtrooper can't hit the side of a barn shooter is like, pushing people out of the roads, and they're showing that in a lot of scenes. You know, they're really hammering that
Yeah.
home. You know, we saw that in The Mandalorian as well too. They really were thuggish, you could say. So it's nice to see that coming through in that way. I mean, ending up this episode and stuff, and still in the desert before he hits Anchorhead, he goes and digs up the lightsabers too. Like, man, I love that scene, especially right after when you couple that with the Jedi coming to ask him for help and Obi-Wan being like, "Go bury your lightsaber, bro," and live a normal life, and then to go full reversal, right? Like after he goes through town, he sees that poor Jedi, and then like he's like, "Well, man, it's time to lace him up again," become General Kenobi again, and I've just been, Ben, not quite old Ben though, just Ben, you know.
Yeah, and it's been kind of a staple to see them burying, the sabers. Obviously,
Yeah,
we've seen it now a few times beforehand, but then we saw, Ray at the end of Rise of Skywalker, her
totally.
burying that
Yet,
saber. But it's
yet
just,
again in Tatooine, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
so.
There has to be something, I think, eventually that brings full conclusion when they do end the Star Wars saga,
Yeah,
that they're going to talk about why there was Tatooine held such a spot in the universe. Like, was it hard for Force readers? Was it, like, there's got to be something in the dirt.
yeah. I think, at least from my opinion, it goes more along with like George Lucas's thought of it being more of a myth, right? Because you have all the best things of Star Wars are coming from the people, right? Just like backwoods, just a kind of a random tale. It's not going to come from the center of the universe. Your hub where you think all it's coming down. It's going to be, your weirdos, your other people coming,
That's
your fringe society people coming in, and getting the job done.
It's not going to be on Coruscant where you expect it to happen.
Yeah, even though it does, like, I mean, all those things can happen anywhere because you still have the lower levels of Coruscant, right? Like, which, like, hopefully we'll see some more on that, like, in the future. I don't know if it'll be in this series, but, maybe
I think in the Andor series, we 100% will.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll
I
start
really
out there.
feel like
That'll be dirty.
I think that they'll be able to utilize some of that early drawings that George Lucas was doing when he was thinking about doing a series back in the 2000s.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that. And I mean, if they go to him for, some of his old writings, it's, it's going to be a fun ride for sure.
Well, and I'm sure Filoni's kind of keyed in on that as well, too.
Oh, of course. They talk on the regular. I mean, how cool would it be to just be texting with George Lucas while you're in production making this, and you just send him a quick snapshot, like send me a quick picture real quick,
Yeah,
real
quick, just drop that on there.
Here's a set pic, what do you think of this? Should we switch it up? Or, and he's just like,
hey, how about this monster?
Yeah. I'm sure he's on a TV screen in the background, teleprompter, just like hanging out. Like, no, we should change that up.
Oh man, yeah. I think that's now Dave Filoni's job, right? Because I think he wasn't even executive. He might have been executive producer on this one, but more with extra thanks to it. I know Hidalgo was the lore master, but from there, that's all good. Well, yeah. So then from there, like getting in, we have a bunch of new droids too. Like, initially I thought it might be a 4-LOM, but it's one Jack who gets just straight murked. I believe we see C-3PO too when we key into Alderaan.
Yep, and Alderaan was just such a surprise. I know you enjoyed that thoroughly.
I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously don't get to see it as much as we'd like. I mean, unless you count all the pieces that we saw at that one. But it is fun to see where Leia grew up and, the environment that she grew up in, and to see her siblings, the way that they try to treat her, because that's why she becomes the youngest senator in history.
Yeah, her family environment.
Her and her parents are more for the people, whereas his family are more for the money and didn't care much for what else was going on in the rest of the
they really show that family dynamic of Alderaan, because it's a bunch of ruling families that are constantly at war with each other and even fighting within the family. And I know that was
very Game of Thronesy.
Yeah, it's very Game of Thronesy, and that was like really hammered home in the Old Republic game and stuff, which I know isn't necessarily canon, but when they were on the worlds, they've just been fighting for generations and generations and generations. So it's
they're redoing it. They're redoing the Old Republic.
Yeah,
game,
Knights
right?
of the Old Republic. They're redoing and stuff. That's going to be. I think that will be a lot of canon. From what I've heard too, the Acolyte's gonna canonize.
That's gonna be awesome. Yeah, I saw during Star Wars Celebration. I was watching a little bit of it this morning. They were talking about how the remastered version is going to play a big part in canon, which should be cool.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. I love that droid Lola too. I mean, Leia's droid on Alderaan. I mean, and that just drops the other bomb.
They do such a good job. They do such a good job about adding the little droids and Babu Freak. Like I said, I'm not a massive fan of the sequel trilogy, but there are elements that you're just like, that's very Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Babu Freak was just like, a lot of people didn't like the Ewoks when they first saw it. I was still a child, so I loved it.
Yeah,
every part of it. Yeah. So same thing with Babu Freak. It's like that appeals in the right way, I feel like, to all age audience. Yeah. And I think that Lola, this new droid, will do the same. And so did what was the droid that they found on that on the bounty hunter ship that was out there looking for Luke, and he brought him back.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Dio.
The
little green guy on the wheel with the nose, the conical nose. Yeah, man.
But it was great. It wasn't too much. It wasn't like, another droid. We already got BB-8. It was like, no, it fits. So I do have to give credit to the droids always hit. And
I feel like it's always
C-3PO
on point.
is great.
Yeah, Like, and I love the bad droids, like Kylo had his bad droid, his like BB-8 Rip, I forget, I think it was, I forget his name, but it was awesome too. Like, I just love
Oh,
that
the
stuff.
black, the little black circle droid.
Yeah, that guy was awesome
Yeah.
too. You know, I mean, which brings us to like, I think to me the biggest curveball in all this was just overall having Leia, right? Like, I mean,
Great casting,
she was
overshadows some of the
fantastically
other
cast.
actors. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, she does really well. And George Lucas, if we know anything about his history of having kids in roles,
yeah,
he's always done a great job.
yeah,
Like he helped with Goonies, even though Steven Spielberg and all of them were behind Driving Force. They were such good friends during all that time that
yeah,
like getting the right kids to do the right stuff was conversation always. So I'm sure
definitely.
this was the same, even though he didn't have the final say. I'm sure they're like, this is the person that we're picking to play one of the greatest characters you ever created. And
Yeah,
he's like, perfect.
yeah, and she
You
just
know?
she nails it, the whole time. Like, and how they started off, she's getting dressed up, but it's not her; it's one of her handmaidens. I'm like, it just brings it all back, and Obi-Wan even ends up mentioning it later on in episode 2 how closely similar she is to her mom, right? Like,
Padme, yeah, she's
and it's
acting like
just
Tyler
they
Grace
they hammer
sporadically.
it home the whole time. Like, it's so beautiful because like how they do it is it's really integrated into the story well. It's very playful too. She has this great droid Lola that reminds me of Batteries Not Included. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that one, but awesome movie too.
How could you not?
So it's just
Yeah.
cute how they did it, and it's like the integration of a character like that at a younger stage, I think is awesome. How they're able to do that, especially if they're able to pull it off like that. And I think that's a good age. Like, you might even be able to argue maybe if they started off a little bit more like that in Han Solo, they might have gotten a little bit farther, on the Solo standalone. But who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, I mean, showing exactly how he got to where we started off with him in Solo
Yeah,
would have been intriguing,
yeah,
seeing his dad working on the freight ships and things like that would have been cool,
yeah.
but maybe it would have worked a little bit better if they just would have done a quick and then a time jump, like
Oh
showed
yeah.
him kind of like they showed Luke here doing the pod
Hmm.
racing, which is very reminiscent of his
That's
dad,
what I love.
obviously.
Yeah.
And just those little calls speak so much because in your head, then you play that out,
Hmm.
and as just a viewer, when you get that much more of an experience out of it, it just adds so much. And you have to think like when they sit down and write these things, they think about those key points, those plot points are like, if we do this, they'll understand the direction that this character is going in.
Yeah. Well, even just that simple scene of Luke on the farm, right? And
Yep.
he's racing, and then
Just doing
Owen
a little
comes out
pattern.
and loses his mind, right? He's like, "Luke, where
Yeah.
are you?" And it's like he'd only not seen him for just a little bit, but that kind of sets the stage, right? We understand why we end up with this whiny little kid that just wants to go get some power converters. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's like it's just a great telling of that story, and that's, I mean, watching Leia come in and nail that. And now we're getting, Jimmy Smits is back as Bale, and it's just it's fantastic. Like watching that interaction. My hope is this is filling in a little bit of lore, that little bit that people have been questioning from R2, that little snippet from R2, delivered of Princess Leia, years ago, and now we're getting kind of the full circle on that, like because that whole fighting with him in the Clone Wars and beyond, right? Like,
Yeah.
and here we are, and he's on this epic quest now to get Leia back, which I'm like, I can't wait to watch it come to fruition now. I also liked the inclusion of Haji, Estri,
Oh,
Kumail, dude, like playing the fake Jedi. I love it, like love it.
I wasn't concerned about the role he's going to play because I enjoy majority of the things that he does, even in Eternals, the
Yeah, yeah,
MCU. Like when he's being thrust into these bigger projects, and I always like his delivery, but he does come from that comedic background, and you're just wondering like how is he going to fit. And in
yeah,
Star Wars, there's always room for that
Always
type
room,
of
right?
that dry humor.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, like, what character is he actually going to play, and how is he going to fit in this role with someone as serious as Obi-Wan? And I think that they placed him correctly, and
Yeah. Oh,
he had
definitely.
just enough screen time so far
Yeah.
to not overdo it. They didn't make it gimmicky. It
Not
wasn't,
at all.
it's
Yeah.
cheesy. And I think he played the role to a T.
Yeah. Good
And I
little bit
love
of
that
flair. Yeah.
he's canon Star Wars character, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I definitely dug him. I think he might come back. We'll see because he obviously knows their destination. And I know that now he's concerned for them overall because he kind of idolizes, Obi-Wan, obviously. And now, the third sister knows what's up, because she just mind swiped him hard, you know? So we'll see how that ends up going, too, We also got to see Obi-Wan getting kind of the crap kicked out of him a little bit on that world, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, by not being able to use the Force as much, or
yeah,
not using it as much in the last 10 years,
yeah,
you
a little
really
rusty.
see, yeah, how, he hides that muscle. He doesn't use that muscle
Yeah.
in his mind very often. So it was kind of wild to see him like have to brush it off and try to use it to save Leia from hitting the ground there,
Yeah.
which was just kind of wild.
Yeah, that.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in. That is the first half of a two-part drop. Go and watch the second half of our review of the first 2 episodes of Nerf Herders, Scruffy Nerf Herders, I should say, on Billy's YouTube channel, which will be linked right below. And don't forget to smash a like below. And we'll be coming out as much as possible with a bunch of more Star Wars content. Anytime the new shows drop, movies, announcements, we will be jumping on here and giving you the updates. But we'll talk to you soon. Malcolm Media out. Peace.